Hey guys, today we're going to talk about semantics. Semantics deals with how we express meaning through our communication. There are two categories in semantics. The first category is lexical semantics, which deals mainly with word meanings and how the meaning of one word interacts with the meaning of another word. On the other hand, compositional semantics deals with the interaction of phrase meanings. Sense is, for example, what comes to mind when you think of chair. Maybe you think something used in a classroom to sit on. Referent, on the other hand, is the actual chair. Dictionaries can be really useful, but not very specific. They also change constantly, and they serve mainly as suggestions. That's why the best definitions are offered by us as speakers of a language.
So there are several ways we can try to figure out what a word means. We could look in a dictionary, we could rely on a mental image of the word, or we could look at the conditions in which we use the word, which is usage-based definitions. However, there are problems with these methods of figuring out meaning. If we look up the word sadness in a dictionary and its definition is the state of being sad, where does that get us if we don't understand what the word sad means? Mental images are also faulty because my conception of a word like bird might be a songbird, but your conception of that same word might be a flamingo. The default image we think of when we hear a word is called a prototype, and such an image doesn't cover the full range of meaning for a word. Usage-based definitions are probably the most reliable way to figure out meaning. They show us the suitable conditions in which to use a word in order to convey a particular meaning. But overall, the sense or concept of a particular word can be difficult to fully grasp. Understanding word reference can help us to figure out what a word means. The referent can be a single object or person, such as cat or Donald Trump, or it could be a set of things or people. The verb swim, for example, has as its referent all the people in the world who swim. The word book has as its referent all the set of books in the world.
So there are many ways that words can be related. Some of the ways to represent semantic relationships between words are eponymy, synonymy, and then ontonymy. Eponymy is a word of more specific meaning than a general or subordinate term applicable to it. So under this is hypernym and hyponym. So hypernym is the broader meaning, and then hyponym is the more specific meaning. An example of this is a daisy and a flower. Daisy is a hyponym to the flower because it is a specification of the flower, which is the broader category or the hypernym. With this comes sister terms, which means the words are the same in all the same sets and have the same hypernym. For example, daisy and rose are sister terms because they are specifications of the broader term flower. Another way to relate words is synonymy. Being synonymous means that they have exactly the same reference. So this is seen through words such as couch and sofa or quick and rapid. A third meaningful relationship is ontonymy, which means that their meanings must be related but also must contrast in some way. One form of this is being complementary, where there's nothing that is a part of both X's and Y's reference, and they cannot be both at the same time. So words such as this are married and unmarried, or existent and non-existent. Another form of this is gradable, which represents points on a continuum. These tend to be relative and don't represent absolute value. Wet and dry is an example of a gradable antonym. They represent different points on a continuum. A third form seen through this is reverses, which is words that suggest some sort of movement. And this one word in the pair suggests an undoing of the other movement. We can see this through expressions such as put together, take apart, or expand, contract. And then a fourth and a final subcategory of ontonymy is converses. These are two opposing points of view or change in perspective. So for one member of the pair to have a reference, the other must as well. Lend, borrow display this relationships because they reference and contrast each other.
A proposition is the claim expressed by a sentence. Words in isolation do not express propositions. A defining characteristic of that is that it can be true or false. Asking a question is a good way of finding out if it's a proposition or not. All propositions have a truth value. For example, The Office is the best TV show. Truth conditions are the conditions that would have to hold in the world in order for some proposition to be true. And truth conditions of a sentence don't necessarily reflect current reality. For example, it is raining in Indiana is only true when it is raining in Indiana. Relationships between propositions. So A, for example, all cows moo. B, Mackenzie's cow moos. A truth of A guarantees the truth of B. The proposition expressed by all cows moo entails the proposition expressed by Mackenzie's cow moos. This is called entailment. In reasoning about entailment, we are not concerned with actual truth values of propositions. Rather, we are evaluating other truth conditions. The principle of compositionality. The meaning of a sentence or any other multi-word expression is a function of the meanings of the words it contains and the way in which these words are phonetically combined. In a sentence, if the lexical parts are taken out of the sentence, what remains will be the rules of composition.
Continuing with principle of compositionality. When saying a word or phrase is compositional, it really means the literal translation. The dictionary term refers to the multi-word expressions that are predictable from their meanings or words and their syntactic combination. An example is the phrase Polly kicked the bucket, which is implying that Polly is doing the literal action upon the bucket. An idiom is almost a literal complete opposite of compositional. An idiom can also be called non-compositional, for it has nothing to do with the literal meaning. So for the Polly kicked the bucket example, the phrase kick the bucket actually means to die. These idioms are usually created by society or linguistic rules. Next concept of the unit refers to the combination of meanings of verb phrases and noun phrases. The idea here is that the noun must be aligned with the verb. An example is Sandy runs. The truth condition must be true, so Sandy must be running and must be in existence for this to be true. The next concept is talking about the combination of meanings of adjectives and nouns. The meaning is dependent on the adjective involved. To understand that, we must understand the concept of pure intersection. Pure intersection is the relationship between an adjective and a noun it modifies, that de-alienates a particular group of things, and the references of the phrase is referring both to the noun and the adjective. An example is green sweater. The relationship is between the adjective green and the noun sweater. The main concept is that two can be identified independently. So green can be independent of sweater, and sweater is independent of green. Also, another term is intersective adjective. This type of adjective is needed to produce the pure intersection. So the example green from green sweater is the intersective adjective. The next major concept is talking about relative intersection and the subsective adjectives. Relative intersection is the relationship between adjective determined relative to the noun reference. An example of this is the mice versus big mice. So the relationship between the two changes the meaning of the noun from mouse to a large group of mice. The subsective adjective is the adjective used in this relationship. So the word big would be a subsective adjective. The big key is in the pure intersection, the words can be independent of each other, and in relative, it needs both words for it to make sense. The last concept of semantics is the non-intersection versus anti-intersection adjectives. Non-intersection is an adjective that is a subset of a noun, but does not refer to any set of things. Some example is a possible solution or alleged thief. There is uncertainty. The next one is anti-intersection, so is an adjective that which referents are not set by the noun. So an example here is fake or non-existent. So you think of the prefix anti, which means opposition. The big picture here is that semantics allows us to find meanings in words and phrases and the relationship between syntactic categories. It helps us understand each other and how we can have meaning and they can have power as well, and that they can shift the theme really quick. Thank you for listening to our presentation on semantics, and good luck on the final.